Welcome to the EcoSend podcast. Be inspired, educated, and entertained by the world's most ambitious leaders, putting climate at the top of their agenda.
Hi there, welcome to another episode of the EcoSend podcast. It's great to be back. I'm your host, James, and I am joined by a very special guest today. I'm joined by Carlos Terol. Now, who is Carlos, I hear you ask? Well, maybe many of you already know Carlos. Carlos is the founder of Good Ripple, which is a platform on a mission to connect 300 million changemakers by 2030. They're already 3,500 members strong from over 100 countries, focusing on three key things: connecting, collaborating, and growing. Carlos has been incredibly influential in my world. I think he's doing just some incredible work. So it's such an honor to have you on the show today, Carlos. How are you doing today?
Hi, James. Thank you so much for the kind words, and thank you so much for having me here. It's a real honor. And I'm doing wonderful today. Really excited about this chat together, to be honest.
Awesome. And I must say, before we hit the recording on this show, I had to comment on Carlos's background because he's surrounded by sunshine at the moment. I believe he's got seaside near him. Carlos, tell us where you are in the world today.
Yes, I'm in Las Palmas de Gran Canaria in Spain, a small island in the middle of the ocean. This is where I'm from originally. I'm visiting parents and family here. I'm very lucky because my mom lives in an 11th floor, and I've got really nice views over here of the sea and the sunshine out there. So yeah, super amazing day.
Making us all very, very jealous, Carlos.
Sorry.
It's okay in London. It's not too bad. So Carlos, tell us a little bit more about yourself. Who are we speaking to? Who is Carlos for those who don't know?
Yeah, so I think I would say that I'm on a changemaker journey. I'm someone who started a changemaker journey about 10 years ago. And before I was a very different person, and most people might not believe it, but I used to, not be into sustainability at all, like quite the opposite. And I used to just have these goals in life of, I want to have expensive cars. I want to have a big house. And when I was like 18, my goals in life would be, at 25, I want a BMW. At 30, I want a Ferrari. At 40, I want a Lamborghini. And those were my goals, right? So luckily, I've changed a lot. I like to believe for the better.
You want an Aston Martin instead, right?
Exactly, yes. An electric one. Funny that I don't even have a car now.
There we go.
I don't even enjoy driving anymore, which is quite crazy.
Some change.
Yeah. So that was me when I was studying at uni. But I was really lucky because I had some friends from Western Sahara, which is the country just opposite in Africa, in front of the Canary Islands. And when I finished my degree here, I studied civil engineering. That's my background. And when I finished the degree, my friend told me, hey, why don't you come here to Western Sahara? And we actually set up a little business there. I don't often talk about this because it just lasted for like 2 months and then it kind of crashed. But I was like, okay, I'll go there. And the surprising thing is that it's just a 30-minute flight from Las Palmas to Western Sahara, to Layun, the capital there.
Wow.
So I got on this plane that literally, it goes up and down. It doesn't stay up. So went up and down. When I landed there, I saw a totally different reality. People were living in poverty with pollution everywhere. And most importantly for me, it was lack of opportunities. And that made me realize that up until that point, I was thinking that everything I had in life, it was because I had put the effort in, I had studied hard, etc. And then I realized that before all of those things, there was something more important, is that I was given the opportunity to do all of that. And I realized the people there didn't have those opportunities. And that just blew my mind. I was like, we're limiting the human potential so much by deciding who gets the opportunities depending on where you're born or when you're born. And that just changed my mindset completely. And I thought, I have to do something to help more people in the world. And that's where I started my Changemaker journey. Think, okay, then I just didn't have a clue of what I would do or how could I help more people. But I said, okay, I'm gonna spend my life trying to figure out how can I help more people out and just try my best along the way to help them. So everything for me started more about the social justice, global development side of things. And then from there, I started learning more about sustainability, climate change, etc. And I sort of started growing what I call our bubble of care, my bubble of care. So I started caring about more things, people, planet, etc. And over time, yeah, I decided to start doing more of that. And I think I'm still on that journey of figuring out how can I maximize my positive impact in the world? How can I help more people, help the planet? But 2 years ago, I sat down to kind of reflect about if I could only do one thing for the rest of my life, what would that be? And I came to the realization that it would be Good Ripple, this platform to connect change makers. And that's what sort of pushed me to start Good Ripple 2 years ago. And here we are now, 3,500 members, and really, really blown away by how positively it's been received. Because I thought, I'll start this thing, and I'm sure that after a few months, it'll be just me and my girlfriend and maybe a couple of friends, just to be nice. and suddenly we had all these people joining and connecting and collaborating and saying, hey, we really needed this. So to me, that's been like super, super positive and super inspiring to keep going till today.
That's incredible. What a journey, and so fascinating to hear. You know, I speak to quite a few people on this podcast, and often it takes some sort of event to happen or some sort of exposure to something very different in their lives that is that cause, that seed that grows until they have to do something about it. And it's incredible. Yeah, your travels and your exploration of the world and seeing maybe parts that that many people maybe have never been to had such a profound impact on the kind of the trajectory for you, Carlos. It's really fascinating to hear. And I'm curious then, you talk about change makers, you talk about bringing change makers together. What's a change maker? Tell us what you see as a change maker, and what does it take to become one?
Yeah, that's a really good question, James. I think that's, for us, is the $1 million question, because I think for us, change maker is anyone who is trying to make the world a better place. Whether it's sustainability, climate change, biodiversity, social justice, well-being, mental health, diversity and inclusion, anything that improves the world in any way. So it's a very broad definition, as you can tell. So it includes a lot of people in there. We actually have a little bit of a hard time to be able to have a word that brings all of those people together. So far, we're using change makers because we feel it's the most appropriate one we've found so far. But I would love to hear if you have any better suggestions, because the truth is that not everyone who's making the world a better place identifies themselves as a change maker. Some people think, change maker is an employee within an organization that's driving change internally. Other people think change maker is a policy maker. Those are the ones making change. So, there's very different definitions. Some people think change makers are just activists who are going to protest and demonstrations. And for us, change maker, it's really the most inclusive word we've found, but it's not perfect. Because it doesn't really bring everyone together. Maybe we could use citizen, active citizen, as a bit of a more inclusive one. But again, some people might not think of citizen as something active in terms of actively making the world a better place. So it's a tricky one. But so far, we're going with that word because the best one we found so far.
It's easy to get spend all year figuring out the right word and not making any actual change, isn't it?
Yeah.
But that is an interesting dilemma, isn't it? To try and bring together what must be quite a disparate group of people with very different traits, different backgrounds, different, geographies, all sorts, to bring them together under one name and one consistent theme. It must be a difficult thing. But I mean, Changemaker inherently to me means people want to change things for the better, which is usually a good idea. I'm all behind the Changemaker word right now, Carlos. That sounds great to me.
Good. That's good to hear, James. But yeah, I think we're kind of going against all marketing advice because we're not niching down, we're keeping it really broad. And we're doing this on purpose. And although it makes our life a lot more difficult when it comes to, obviously, if we want to run an event, a specific event, like it's not going to please everyone, right? Because we have so many different people in there. But that's the main reason why we were born as a community, as a platform. And it's because we're lacking this overarching safe space where change makers can come together. And I've seen this in my life, and I've seen it in many other lives, is that I started caring about poverty. That was kind of my hook into change making. But then I started caring about well-being, mental health, biodiversity, climate change, you name it. So I started growing my bubble of care and caring about more things. That doesn't mean that I do I take action for every single one of them, because my energy, my time is limited, but at least I can care about them. I can feel responsible for them. And, that means that I could do whatever I can for them. So we are all about expanding that bubble of care for change makers. And we believe that by bringing people together that are not necessarily in the same silo, in the same echo chamber, like getting them out of that, it can also help them grow and maximize their impact, grow their impact. So that's what we're trying to do, and sort of bridging that gap between different change makers.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that's such a great sort of summary though of I think the journey a lot of people go on, where they often, going back to your earlier points, like you see something in the world and you want to change it and you start learning more about it. But, I think we've found as a team at EcoSend, like the focus on climate has then naturally expanded out to all of these related topics that clearly need change. And you realize very quickly that everything in the world is messy and chaotic and connected, and you want to try and change things for the better. Like, you can't do certain things to impact climate without also caring about many, many other connected kind of fields. And I think it's another thing where I've seen, certainly in the world of business, where companies kind of want to put metrics to everything, and they look at climate as being carbon emissions, and carbon emissions is the thing you measure, and that's the thing you report, and that's the thing you change. But in reality, like, when you look at what you're trying to impact, climate is so much more than that. There's a lot of things that are very, very hard to measure and that relate to all these other things. And I guess sort of highlight that, because kind of maybe takes us on to another topic I know you were keen to talk about, Carlos, which is entrepreneurship and making impact. And impact entrepreneurship is like the phrase I guess we sort of use these days. Like, tell me more about this. Like, how does that overlap with change makers? I assume it's very entrepreneurial community, but yeah, it'd be good to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm so happy, James, that you've mentioned about that metric and our obsession with measuring, because I'm such a big advocate for that as well. And, we're seeing this movement in the whole of society that we are only caring these days about what we can measure. And we're obsessed with data, which to some degree is fine, right? We need data. We need to know the numbers, what's going on. But we have such an obsession with data that we're forgetting that some of the most important things are just not measurable, right? It's like, just to mention, like with the carbon footprint, right? Where everybody's focusing just on the carbon footprint because that's very easy to measure. But how about, you might be familiar with the concept of the carbon handprint or the carbon shadow, which is more about your wider impact. How about the people you are influencing? How about the people you are helping educate? You are mobilizing, all of that thing. It's very difficult to measure the impact. You can measure how many people you influence to some degree, but
Mm.
what's the real impact of that? What that person went on to do thanks to that inspiration, maybe, right? That's just impossible to measure, but the impact is there, and I think it's super important to be mindful and trying to find a balance between the two. I think the measurable and the non-measurable. So yeah, I just wanted to mention that because I'm so also passionate about that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's such a good point. I'm actually curious, especially for many listeners, Carlos. You mentioned two terms there that may be new to people: the carbon handprint and the carbon shadow. Like maybe just in a few words, can you summarize those?
Yeah. So I think so the carbon footprint we're all kind of familiar. So it's more about measuring what's the carbon impact of your life. So whether it's transport, food, your housing, etc. So all of that has a carbon footprint. So it's kind of easy. You can go online, type in carbon calculator, and you can find your carbon footprint, right? But that focuses only on those things that emit carbon. And as you said, that's just part of the equation, right? And we need to look at climate change more holistically and say, well, there's other things that I do that impact climate change. And if I can inspire 10 people to maybe change slightly their habits or, eat more healthy or less meat or whatever, just to put an example, that impact is there, but it's not accounted anywhere to me, right? And because that is not accounted, then we kind of ignore it. And it's important to realize that we can make a positive impact in so many other ways other than just reducing our carbon footprint. And that would be the carbon shadow or the carbon handprint, which is the wider impact we can create. Also, an important element there is our finances. And that's something that's not included in our carbon footprint. But if we change our bank, our savings, our investments, our pension, all of those things also have a big impact on climate, and they are not included in the carbon footprint traditionally.
Yeah.
So it's all of those things outside of the carbon footprint that we can do to have a positive impact, whether it's helping educating others, whether it's joining movements, right? If you join a movement, you're growing that pressure on the system, which is going to help change things. But that doesn't go anywhere in any metric in the carbon footprint, but you're part of that movement, right? I think about Greta Thunberg, for example, when she started the movement and the strikes on schools. That's not accounted. The millions of people she's inspired is not accounted in her carbon footprint, but she's had such a huge positive impact for climate change that it's part of her carbon handprint or her carbon shadow. And it's important that we realize about those because they're very valuable as well.
Yeah. No, absolutely. That's such a great summary. Thank you, Carlos. That's really, really fascinating to hear that. Amazing.
So back to your maybe. Oh, sorry. Go on.
Oh yeah. Well, yeah. Impact. Yeah. I mean.
Because I just didn't respond. I went on a tangent.
Yeah. No, I took you right off track. So yeah, impact entrepreneurship, and tell us more about this. People maybe listening that are thinking about starting businesses or already running a business, maybe consider themselves quite entrepreneurial, but are they impact entrepreneurs? That's the question.
Yeah. So I love the term of impact entrepreneurship because I think there's a lot of talk about entrepreneurship and how to sell more, how to make money, etc. And I think we already have enough entrepreneurs in the world. We need really more impact entrepreneurs for people who, you might still want the money or the fame or whatever that is, but also align that with a purpose, align that with having an impact. And I do believe that we could create many more impact entrepreneurs. We could really have a better world a lot faster. And it's funny because in our community, a lot of people are into that space. We don't target them particularly, but they seem to be identify as change makers quite a lot. So they tend to come to the community. And it's interesting because I think a lot of people also want to create that impact business. And there's lots of people in the community who might have just a normal job, nothing to do with impact. And they're all thinking, how can I create an impact business and make that career switch? So there's a lot of demand for that. And when we run events about, hey, how to set up your impact startup or how to go solo in the impact space as a solo business owner, those tend to be the ones that are more popular. So it seems that out there, lots of people want to create these. And for me, it's really amazing because I think one of our issues right now with climate change, biodiversity crisis, etc., is that we have quite a few businesses that got too big. And unfortunately, that comes with lots of challenges, right? With that sort of scale, it's very difficult for them to actually get climate change and biodiversity right because things just go out of control, right? At that scale. And if we can create more smaller businesses, so empower lots of people to become entrepreneurs and, go back to the small business type society, I think that can sort a big part of the issue because it's a lot more easy to sort of tackle these issues when you're a small business. You have power over your carbon footprint, you have power over your suppliers, etc., etc. But when you are too big, it's just very difficult, right? And I think empowering people to go out there and take that step, take that leap into entrepreneurship and impact entrepreneurship especially, it's really powerful. So we want to do a lot more of that in Good Ripple. We want to help impact entrepreneurs to get started, to move to the next level, etc. And yeah, I think for me, it's really inspiring to see so many people with great ideas. I have lots of calls with people that are, I want to start building this. And when you hear the ideas and you see how many ideas are out there and people who are willing to take them on, it's really inspiring, honestly. And a lot of those people just need that little push, that little, someone who's there to give them support and they go on and do it on their own. So yeah, it's amazing.
That's such an uplifting and inspiring outlook on entrepreneurship in particular, Carlos. Like to see how much entrepreneurial energy and spirit is out there, and to channel that, harness that, and push it towards positive change in the world is truly a wonderful thing. And I know I feel tremendously optimistic about our ability to tackle many of the world's problems with some very entrepreneurial and creative minds. So it's the only way we're going to get through this. We're not going to get through it by doing the things that we've done in the past. So I think it's just such a, you can look at the world we're in and be quite frustrated at times, I think, but I think it fills me with so much hope when you see what people are trying to do and the kind of businesses people are trying to build. And it's a frustrating time at times, but also a very, very exciting and inspiring time. And I think out of big challenges come great businesses too. I truly believe that.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think the impact entrepreneurship world is also quite key in terms of building resiliency, because if you only have a couple of very big companies that have most of the jobs and employment and control everything, that's not resilient, right? If something happens to them, then there's a big issue. Whether if you have a more diversified network of businesses and entrepreneurs that work together, collaborate, then it's a lot more resilient, right? Because you don't no longer depend on just a few key players, but it's a network, it's a collaborative network. And if one of them fall, there's many others that can help. And also it won't impact the system as much, so we can carry on. So I think it's an important part of how do we build resiliency going on, especially with what's coming with climate change, etc. I think we do need this sort of resiliency where people don't just depend, an entire population or city just depends on a couple of employers, but actually they're all interdependent and have their own methods. Yeah, so I think it's important.
Yeah, absolutely. I know that the time is flying by, Carlos, and I really want to make sure we cover some of your other topics and touch on a few more things. But content creation and personal branding, this has clearly been a very crucial thing for you. And I whenever I'm on LinkedIn, as soon as I load it up, I see Carlos there sharing some words of wisdom, some inspiration. Tell us more about why you're doing that and the importance of that, and what you think others can do to follow in your footsteps.
Yes. So I think for me, personal branding, it's been like one of the best decisions in my life. I would totally recommend it to anyone. I know it's scary at the beginning, putting yourself out there and even not knowing what I'm going to write about, what I'm going to share about. Are people going to care? We all have those doubts. But it's definitely worth trying. It has changed completely in my life in many ways. All the opportunities, like the fact that I'm talking to you right now, right? If I hadn't started this journey with personal brand, I wouldn't be here. We wouldn't know each other, and I just would have missed so many opportunities. So yeah, totally recommend getting started on this journey for people. For me, it was really about, so 2 years ago when I mentioned I sat down to see what can I do for the rest of my life. Okay, it's good Ripple. Now, easy. So I want to create a platform to connect change makers. Fine. So how do I find those change makers, right? Because yeah, I can go on, put a website, whatever, but how do I bring the change makers in? So for me, I had been using LinkedIn as sort of consuming content there for a couple of years. And I think from all the social media, for me, it's the one that I relate the most, because I think it's a bit more, there's less noise in a way. It's a bit more focused, it's a bit more respectful, and you can learn a lot in a very focused way, I think. So I thought, okay, I love writing, and I kind of like LinkedIn as a platform compared to other social media that I'm not really on any other social media. I'm not sure, I probably will eventually, but for now I just stick to LinkedIn. And I thought, well, what if I start writing, sharing my thoughts or whatever, to see if people resonate with that, because I love writing anyway, so I'm going to enjoy it for sure. Whether somebody sees it or not, that's kind of secondary. So I thought I'll start doing that and see how that goes. And if it works, it can help to bring change makers and see whether they like this idea of the Good Ripple platform. So in November 2022, that's when I started posting on LinkedIn. I didn't know initially what I was going to write about. I thought, well, I'll write about the sustainable development goals because I'm really passionate about them. And funny enough, I've mentioned them a couple of times, but not so much now. And I think when you start, you may have an idea, and then you start pivoting, you start getting feedback and adjusting however you feel about different things, different topics. So, you don't have to have a super clear idea of what you're going to do. Just get started, see how it goes, and just iterate with how you feel about it and also how other people are reacting to it. But I think the most important part is you have to genuinely enjoy it. And, I think some people start just with a goal in mind of, I'm going to use this to get leads or whatever. And that's the only goal. And I think if you don't come to it with a sense of, I want to enjoy this process, it's going to be very difficult to make it sustainable and successful in the long term. So I think that's something key that I would suggest. Like, if you don't like it, maybe learn how to like it. That's something else, right? But if you're just doing it for another purpose, I think it might not work that well. So I think it's gotta be that genuine enjoyment of the process.
There's some really wonderful advice there, Carlos. A lot of that really resonates for me, and I think there's a lot to be said in particular for writing, and I know it can be really difficult. I've struggled with this myself, like getting into the headspace to write something, and especially when you've gone a long time maybe without writing something. I often find that when you just sort of like tell yourself, okay, I'm going to put some time aside, and you just start. I find writing to be this incredible way to kind of clarify one's own thoughts, and I find, especially when you share publicly, like you're doing on LinkedIn, whether you're doing that via LinkedIn, via email, via any of the other channels that you can share your written work on, like, you get that feedback. Maybe you get the feedback that no one cares. Maybe you get the feedback that people really care and think you're wrong. But it all helps feed into like developing one's own like understanding of topics. And I just think it's such an incredible thing. And what really, really inspiring to hear your thoughts on that, Carlos. So thank you.
And I think also for me, it has helped me a lot to improve as a person, because suddenly you have all of this accountability buddies out there, right?
Yeah.
And because you're sharing it publicly, and it helps you grow faster, I think, because the amount of improvements that I've done over the last 2 years, I think, are a lot more than the previous 10 years. And it's because I'm putting out there, I'm learning more about the topic, I'm learning more from other people, and suddenly I want to be better, right? I want to be better. I want to improve more every day, because I try to be an inspiration for others. I try to be a role model. And I say, well, this thing, I can actually improve it. And now there's all these people that I can inspire if I change it. So why not? So, there's a lot of sort of a feedback loop that you get from posting and sharing with other people that's really enriching your own life and your own experience as well.
Absolutely. Thank you, Carlos. I think you've already inspired me tremendously. I want to go and write something now, right as soon as after I've done this podcast. But
go for it, James.
Just before we wrap up, I know you wanted to share. I mean, you've already shared a lot of wonderful wisdom, Carlos. But I know you had a few pieces of advice maybe you wanted to share, and then we can wrap up what's been a wonderful show.
Yeah, definitely. I think one thing that I wanted to share is in terms of, I see a lot of people in our community are looking for jobs and they want to make a career switch into impact. And I think that's challenging. A lot of people are really struggling with that. And obviously there's no magic formula around it. But something that I see a lot happening is that people are sometimes trying to rush this process, and rather than applying to, say, 3, 5, 10 jobs really carefully, really well done, like, reading the job description and preparing a CV that's tailored to that position, and preparing the cover letter, reaching out to the person who's on LinkedIn actively looking for this role. I see people just go on and hit apply. And unfortunately, that strategy doesn't work very well. Because the person on the other side notices whether you've put some effort, how genuinely interested are you about that position. And I see a lot of people coming to me say, hey, yeah, I've been applying to lots of jobs and I don't really get any response. And suddenly, with a couple of people I work together, and I've given them a couple of tips on how to improve that, and it makes such a huge difference. If you show the other person that you truly care, that you genuinely want that position, that you're passionate about it, not just your skills. Your skills are important, but you need to show the passion, especially in the impact space. If you show that passion, it can really take you forward a lot. And something as simple as having a nicely designed CV, just go on Canva and type CV template, and you get like really nice designs with a little bit of color. And that, when you're scrolling through 100 CVs and you see one with a nice branding, with a nice color, without going too fancy, but just a little bit, it really stands out. So it can help you really get that position. So, I'm sharing this. We do have a lot of people in the community struggling to find jobs, wanting to make that career transition. So I know there's a lot of people out there. So if you're listening and that's you, try to put a bit more care in that process and focus more on quality rather than quantity, and you should see big differences. Yes, and always send a cover letter, even if it's not requested. Send it. It makes a difference. It shows that you're going the extra mile and you genuinely care about that position.
Amazing, Carlos. Quality over quantity is definitely wise words of advice any day of the week. So,
yeah.
And I think, Carlos, you might be too humble to share your own resource, but I believe you have a whole curation of job boards that people can have a look at as well, which we'll make sure we link in the show notes as well, right?
Yeah, definitely. We've got a bit of a curation, of like 220 impact job boards. So yeah, for people who are struggling and don't know where to start, we have that on Notion. So you could just take the link, copy it to your own Notion, and then you can filter and sort and find the ones that are relevant to you, and then use them to apply. And hopefully that can help a bit in the process.
Wonderful. That is absolutely fantastic, Carlos. And I guess last but not least, if anyone wants to follow you, speak to you more, well, I believe you might be on LinkedIn, right?
Yes, that's right. Yeah, that's the main place to find me. Yes.
Yeah. We'll link in the show notes, and your website, goodripple.co. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, if
Brilliant,
anybody
brilliant.
wants to check out the community, yeah, goodripple.co.
Amazing. Carlos, thank you so much today. It's been a pleasure speaking with you.
Thank you, James, for having me here. It's really an honor. It's been really good.
Oh, too kind, Carlos. Too kind. Thank you so much. And thank you if you're listening, watching. Honestly, it's a pleasure doing this show. I feel like I've got the best job in the world being able to speak to people like Carlos. So if you've enjoyed listening, watching today, please do let us know. Please do give us thumbs up, 5 stars, whatever works, and tell other people about this. Especially if you know anyone who's currently sort of between jobs, looking for their next move. Maybe this would be a great episode to share with them. So, yeah, thank you for following along, and we will catch you next time.